I'm Elaine Reyes at the CCTV UN Bureau at United Nations headquarters in New York. And this is UN Insider.
Coming up.
The SDGs still are within reach if we act with urgency and ambition.
Rallying new momentum for sustainable development, from health and decent work to gender equality.
If one country is doing better, we're all doing better. And that's the way the world works.
A conversation on how far things have come and what needs to change to reach the 2030 goals.
It's not just developing, looking at the monetary side, but also look at all other aspects of human life.
Working toward a new Africa as the continent strives to meet the SDGs. Next.
"17 goals with the potential to change the world." Back in 2015, UN member states adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. On this edition of UN Insider, we'll take a look at where the world stands in the effort to reach those ambitious goals.
The Sustainable Development Goals are not a dream, they are a plan to keep our promises to the most vulnerable people, to each other, and to future generations.
Secretary General Antonio Guterres says the Sustainable Development Goals are still within reach, but achieving them will require the world to act with urgency and ambition. The 17 SDGs were announced in 2015. A decade later, UN leaders admit there is work to be done, but point to advances in many areas.
Millions more people have access to electricity, clean cooking, and the internet. Social protection now reaches over half the world's population, up from just a quarter a decade ago. More girls are completing school. Child marriage is declining. Women's representation is growing.
With just 5 years to go until 2030, UN leaders are calling for a renewed push to move sustainable development forward.
We need to reaffirm the relevance of the UN through results by showing that multilateralism delivers real, tangible benefits for people at every level of society.
The 2025 High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development focused on 5 of the SDGs: good health and well-being, gender equality, decent work, life below water, and partnership for the goals. Gender equality is the goal that remains the furthest off track. There has been significant progress in some areas, though. More women and girls are in school than ever before, but there is still a long way to go to reach true gender equality. Here's Seema Bahous, Executive Director of UN Women.
Progress is too slow, too uneven, and too vulnerable to setbacks. This year's review is not only a moment to assess where we stand, but it is also a call, as we've heard, to act boldly and collectively in the short time we have left. We know that if we continue at the current pace, true gender equality in economic life, in leadership, in safety, will remain generations away. And I know that we all agree that this is unacceptable.
Global economic uncertainty, widespread youth unemployment, and lingering setbacks related to the COVID pandemic have been significant obstacles to efforts to create decent work and economic growth. The UN is focusing on proven strategies and innovation to help spur more progress.
Only a strong, multilateral system rooted in solidarity, democracy, and social dialogue can achieve a sustainable world in which full employment is coupled with decent work.
In June, delegates from around the world gathered in the south of France for the UN Ocean Conference. The event resulted in more than 800 commitments from member states, as well as the Nice Action Plan, a conservation blueprint that aligns with the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Now the international community is working to turn those agreements into action.
We have to harness cutting-edge tools and technology. We have to implement existing climate biodiversity, and sustainability commitments, establish the innovative financing that's necessary, and ensure inclusive governance and the equitable distribution of benefits.
During July's high-level political forum on sustainable development, dozens of member states detailed their individual progress towards sustainable development. Here's a sampling of what we heard from some developing countries.
We are providing educational programs and vocational training focused on women, especially in rural areas, as well as enhancing women's access to credit and financial services that can empower them so that they can enter to diverse fields of business and boost their economic participation, starting and growing business, and thus contributing to economic empowerment.
For us, the Sustainable Development Goals are not abstract ideals. They are lifelines, critical tools for survival, resilience, and dignity in one of the most climate-vulnerable corners of our planet. The FSM is a federation of 4 culturally distinct states with more than 600 islands scattered across 2.6 million square kilometers of ocean that we do not simply occupy, but safeguard. We are a proud big ocean state. And like our ancestors who sailed with wisdom and intention, we are navigating this century's development journey with tradition as our compass and sustainability as our sail.
We believe SDGs implementation must be a shared responsibility, engaging not only the government, but also parliament, civil society, the private sector, and broader public. The Indonesian parliament remains fully committed to promoting sustainable, inclusive, and equitable development that benefit both people and the planet.
Coming up,
we are one world, we're one humanity, we're one planet, and we need to be able to advance together.
UN Insider.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
What can the UN do to accelerate progress toward the Sustainable Development Goals as 2030 approaches? I sat down with Canada's UN Ambassador and 2024-2025 President of the Economic and Social Council, Bob Rae. Couple numbers for you here. 35% of SDG targets are on track or making moderate progress. 18% are going backwards. And you said the SDGs are not optional ideals, but rather essential commitments. Explain that for us.
Well, it's not a cafeteria. I mean, it's not like, well, I'd like there to be gender equality, but I don't care about the environment. It's not like that. You need to understand these things all go together. The Sustainable Development Goals are based on the insight that we are one world, we're one humanity, we're one planet, and we need to be able to advance together. Obviously, nation states take ownership of things and nation states decide where their priorities will be, but we have to reinforce the sense of solidarity that allows us to understand that if one country is doing better, we're all doing better. And that's the way the world works. And when we start putting up barriers or walls and we start falling behind, then we have a problem. And that's really, I think, why it's important to keep the SDGs firmly in mind as we think about what is the kind of global order we're trying to create.
36 member states gave reports about their progress in the SDGs. What were you hearing from them about the action they've been taking? Any commonalities among them?
I think the most successful examples are from countries that have embraced the SDGs explicitly in their own budgets, so that they have integrated the SDGs not as somebody else's idea, but this is our idea. So we're applying standards on housing and health and education, equality, justice systems, and so on. We're applying those tests to our budgets. And even further, what we call VLRs, where you have voluntary local reviews, you have cities coming forward and saying, we want to become part of the SDGs. It's been a slow movement, I have to confess. It's not moving as fast as I would like to see. But I think it only works when countries embrace the goals and explicitly tie the goals deep into how they do business. And when that happens, you start to see real national ownership, and you start to see the active engagement of civil society. You start to see people's groups moving forward saying, how can we do better here and there? And I think that's really where we have the most successful examples of SDGs. But it was very moving to hear from different people being prepared to be open about where they've succeeded and where they've failed or haven't succeeded yet. And I think that's a very important part of the process.
I'd like to read back another quote of yours. You've also said, we cannot build a better future without those who are shaping it, and we cannot claim to be inclusive if we are not listening to those who have been historically excluded. At this time, given where we are in the world, how important is it to get on the same page? The importance of multilateralism.
Well, I think it's more important than ever. I really believe this profoundly, and why I've been so honored to be president of ECOSOC is what I get to say from the platform, from the dais as president of ECOSOC is, it's what I believe to be true. It's where I think we need to be as a world. I think we need to embrace multilateralism. I think that we need to reject extreme nationalism. We need to embrace the things we can do together. And we need to embrace the logic of multilateralism, which is the value of solidarity. I once heard, when I first came here, I heard the Secretary General say one time, when he was talking about COVID, he said, solidarity is necessity. And I heard that and I said, I'm going to use that phrase and I'm going to use it over and over again. I'll always give him credit for it, but I think it's an important phrase. Solidarity is not a frill, it's a necessity, because that's the way in which we demonstrate our common humanity and our commitment to each other as human beings. And it goes beyond cooperation between nation states. It goes into something much more profound, which is the recognition that we only have one planet, that we're here for a limited period of time as human beings, and that we do have much to gain from helping each other and from doing whatever we can to express our love and solidarity for each other by what we do. And that also implies action, taking the steps that actually make things happen. How do you achieve goals? You try to score goals. You take action, and I think that's a key point that we have to keep on making.
How much has financing and budgets been part of the discussion here at the UN? We're talking about taking action, but we're also talking about budgets. We're talking about UN 80 reform. Will it be harder to reach those goals in 5 years, given budget shortfalls?
Yes, it will. I mean, there's no point in saying maybe, we don't know. It will be difficult because of the budget situation. And I think it's really critical. There's two budgets I worry about. Obviously, the budgets of nation states. How much are nation states willing to give to the United Nations? And how quickly are they willing to pay their dues? Canada pays right up front. We're very proud of that. Other countries pay on a delayed basis, which is not good for the budget of the UN itself. But it's also important for the private sector, for the global marketplace, to align much more with the SDGs, and for all of us to be working in the same direction, rowing in the same direction with good steering behind us. That concept of having finance that comes both from the private sector and from the public sector and creating the basis for great projects and for things to happen, I think has been a very important message for us. The closer relationship between the UN and the World Bank and the IMF and the IFIs and other development banks around the world, the closer relationships we can have, the better off we'll be. And then the more countries can raise themselves produces, I think, the successful formula for greater development.
What gives you optimism?
Optimism is the only working principle. I mean, it's the only way you can survive in life is to not base hope on some vague kind of Pollyanna idea that everything is just automatically going to get better, but that unless we try, we won't make progress, and if we do try, we will make progress. If I may say so, I paid my first visit to China in 1986. And at that time, China was just beginning the process of opening up and industrialization. And on all my subsequent trips to China over many, many years since that time, I've seen incredible progress. Incredible, unimaginable back in '86 to say, oh, that's what we'll see today. How did that happen? People worked together, people made a decision, and people were optimistic and forward-leaning and hard-working. And those are the same qualities the whole world needs to have. We need to be looking forward to making progress in positive, constructive ways. And that's how things will get better. And we also have to do things and not just say things.
Ambassador Bob Rae, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Coming up.
That's the Africa we want. We want Africa where nobody's left behind.
UN Insider.
No war, no one again began holding guns. Words protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
Excellency, thank you very much for your time. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Twelve of the 25 fastest-growing economies in the world are located in Africa. The continent is working to transform and modernize more economies to address some key issues. 83% of workers are engaged in informal employment. The global average is around 58%. And 23% of African youth are not in education, employment, or training. Africa is home to the world's youngest population, and the continent is making strides in building a digital economy. But Africa still faces a number of development challenges that will require bold solutions. I sat down with Claver Gatete. He is the Executive Secretary of the UN Economic Commission for Africa. Undersecretary General Gatete, thank you so much for joining us. If you can, tell us about some of the key takeaways from the Africa Sustainable Development Report.
Yep, thank you very much. Yeah, the Sustainable Development Report is an account of where we are in terms of the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals that we set ourselves, the 17 goals and over 160 actions that we need to implement. And it is happening at a time when you have so many challenges globally and especially that is affecting the African continent. Globally, we are having an issue of debt. Debt distress to many developing countries that is really reached a certain level where in most cases it's unsustainable. And that's why we talk about what needs to be done to make sure that we can reform the global financial architecture, to address the issues of concessional resources for developing countries, addressing the issues of debt, addressing the issues of shareholding, addressing the issues of management and investment. You cannot finance SDGs without addressing those issues, without addressing the sources of money and also the investment that is required, especially for the developing countries. So that report is helpful to give possibilities. How do we find new sources of money to invest? What are the innovations that are needed?
So you have this list of solutions. You know what to do, but how difficult is it to implement and to get to those solutions? I mean, that's the challenge, right?
The biggest challenge is the political will and interests of member countries. And that's what we have been arguing to say, well, there has to be a political will, there has to be support, and it cannot, we cannot achieve the SDGs without global cooperation. And this has been an issue on the table. Also, the investment within the international financial institutions, such as the World Bank and others, is also a big issue. If you don't inject more money, how do you expect the banking system to continue to grow? How do we mobilize the private sector resources if there is no increase in terms of investment?
Africa has the youngest population on the planet. We're talking about SDGs. We're talking about the youth's future. You talk about the challenges of high debt burdens, declining aid, inequality. What needs to happen? How do you get young people involved for their future?
Yeah, indeed, by 2050, 1 in 3 global youth will be from an African. So you're going to see more of the Africans around in the near future. And what we are seeing now, there is a responsibility of the African countries, which is domestic resource mobilization, meaning generating more of the tax resources, their own tax. But there are so many reforms that needs to be done. It has to be simple. We must provide the capacity to the tax collectors. We must digitize our own economy so that everybody pays their own share. We have to bring the informal sector now to the formal sector so that at least you have a large number of the people who are paying taxes. We lose about 88 billion every year, US dollars, leaving the continent. And we are saying if we addressed it, we'll save some money. We need to increase our tax to GDP ratio, which is currently at 15.6%, very low by any standards. So there is what we need to do, including, of course, the development of the capital market. The capital market is where the private sector gets their long-term resources, and it has to be deliberate in terms of building it. We also have to address the imbalance. The countries which are now borrowing, now that there is not enough resources, you have to borrow from the private sector, meaning you must have good credit rating. So supporting member countries so that they can get good credit rating would help them in terms of borrowing at cheaper rate. And those are the kind of efforts that we're trying to do. But also, eventually, we cannot, as Africans, rely on debt, on aid. There has to be trade and investment. And we have to create a conducive environment for anybody who wants to invest in Africa to be free to come and invest.
There is a hashtag going around right now that is hashtag the Africa we want. What is the Africa you want? What are you hearing? What is everybody saying? And tell us the meaning behind it and what this hashtag is meant to accomplish.
You see, the Africa we want is where all the countries on the continent, because when you are developing them, you come from the low income to the middle income to the high income. And you don't want only to go to the high income without addressing all the other fundamentals. It's not just the monetary side. You need also to improve the welfare of every citizen, to have access to all the services, but also improve their lives. And that's what is incorporated in the continental vision, Vision 2063. It's not just looking at the monetary side, but also look at all other aspects of human life. And that way, when you are developing, you should also take them into account. And that's the Africa we want. We want Africa where nobody is left behind. We want Africa where everybody is included, whether it is women and addressing the issues of gender, whether it is the youth, so that it's the youth who are empowered, who have the skills that are needed to grow our own economies on the continent. So it's the Africa that we want that doesn't leave anybody behind.
Undersecretary General Claver Gatete, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
I'm Elaine Reyes at the CCTV UN Bureau at United Nations headquarters in New York. Thanks for being a UN Insider. I'm Elaine Reyes at the United Nations headquarters in New York, and this is a special edition of UN Insider.
UN Insider serves as an important window for the global audience to better understand multilateral diplomacy.
It's very important for the media to cover the United Nations, to seek to understand and tell the story in ways that the average person in the street can understand.
I think it's very important that the media should contribute to conveying important messages about the reality of today's challenges.
UN Insider has come to the UN, and we at the UN are so grateful to have it here. It is the only dedicated TV program to what is happening in the UN, and it is reaching so many people with, as it says in its title, Inside the UN Stories.
Media plays an important role in providing objective information across the world.
We think that media has a strong power of uplifting, what we are trying to convey as messages as developing countries.
We need the mobilization of all peoples, of whole government and whole of society, and media can help us to be informed so that we also can make our part.
I think the media is fundamental to enable citizens across the world, first of all, to understand what is the rationale of having the United Nations. It's not that there is one place on planet Earth that will tell the rest of the world what to do. It is a much more complex story.